To the clock, it is now turned 6 o'clock, so I will call our work session, briefing session to order. The first order of business is item number 1, which is to discuss the agenda items. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight on your agenda, on the consent agenda, we have approval of the minutes from the September 5th City Council meeting. I think you made one correction to the minutes, is that right, Kristen?
Yes, on the voting for the SUP.
Item 5B is approval of a resolution authorizing procurement of sanitary sewer TV cameras and equipment from CLS Sewer Equipment Company. This is to replace our cameras and transporters that have reached their end of useful life. This is a sole source purchase because this type of equipment was selected to be compatible with the current equipment we have. And CLS is the only vendor in the area that carries the CUES manufactured equipment. It is within the budgeted amount at $109,330. Those are the only items on the consent agenda. On the individual consideration agenda, item 5A is adopting the budget. Richard will have a brief presentation tonight. It will be much briefer than the last one. We'll cover it briefly. And then item 5B is to adopt the tax rate, levying the tax rate. Item 5C is a requirement of the state legislature that a council ratifies the budget, votes again on the budget, and that is what item 5C is. Item 5D is adopting the master fee schedule. We covered those changes with you at the last meeting. Those are either increases in fees, decreases, or some new fees, such as like the small cell nodes that we had previously passed that ordinance at the previous council meeting. Item 5E is an ordinance that reclassifies the pay scale for police and fire under civil service as part of the budget. As we noted before, that includes a change to the pay plan, a 3% increase in the pay plan for police and fire. And because their pay plan is done by ordinance under civil service statutes, their changes have to be adopted by ordinance. And so that is what that item is. Item 5F is a public hearing and an ordinance to amend the LR2 local retail zoning to allow a specific use permit for a wireless telecommunications tower. This is at property at 306 West Camp Wisdom Road. Now, this is not the same as the ordinance that you just recently adopted, which had to do with small cell nodes. This is the large cell antenna, which under our ordinances we do require SUP, and there are some specific conditions with that. This went through P&Z. Chastity will present this item tonight, and it was recommended for approval by P&Z with the conditions noted. And then item 5G is a public hearing and consider an ordinance to adopt Destination Duncanville, a comprehensive plan. And Chastity will go over that as well this evening, but the final version is online now. Those changes, the last edits, typographical errors, and grammar, and some photos and things like that were changed. And so the final version is online now. She'll cover some of those changes that were made. None of them were substantive changes or content changes. And this was previously recommended for approval by the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee as well as the Planning and Zoning Commission. Freeze Nichols will be here as well this evening to present this plan. Those are all of the items on the regular agenda tonight. And then we have the Fire Department quarterly report.
I might say that the only two public hearings that we will have tonight are items number 5F and 5G. So that will be The other items are not public hearings, so I will remind everybody if they want to speak about a particular item on the budget, they'll need to do it during the 2-minute period. We will not have speakers during the consideration period. Okay, item number 2A is to discuss and select marketing firm to design the City of Duncanville logo.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. As the Council recalls, on May 2nd, 2017, the City Council did direct staff to hire a professional firm to design the City of Duncanville's new logo. From that, the staff reviewed logos from 23 different cities across the state of Texas and also some other large cities in the U.S. and obtained information regarding the firms that designed them as well. After evaluation of the top 5 firms, staff narrowed the selection and interviewed the top 2. There will be a 3-phase process to the logo design. The first phase, also known by some firms as the community input or the discovery phase, will include a stakeholders group to be identified. And basically what that'll include is it'll include 3 members or residents from the community that the City Council will appoint, as well as staff members that have been selected to serve on the group, with the group as well. And we'll get further into their responsibilities here just shortly. During the first phase, the firm will conduct research through a stakeholder and community meeting. This is where we're going to ask public input in terms of what they feel like the current perception of the community is, what the current perception of the logo, and even where they see the community moving forward in the future, and also where they feel like the community could be positioned in the future in terms of competitiveness. The firm will conduct in addition, a community-wide online vision survey, and again, it'll identify the same topics. However, it'll be more widespread and to try to include more of the community with that. All information will be utilized to create a SWOT analysis, identifying our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the city's current logo and also of our brand position, where the community sits within the Metroplex and within the Best Southwest, and really how are we competitive with other similar cities to us. During the second phase, the firm will utilize the SWOT analysis to design the new logo and tagline. The tagline might be brand new, or it also might include maybe just some slight modifications or revisions to the existing one in terms of the City of Champions. A minimum of 3 logos will be presented to the stakeholder group to review and consider. Also, the stakeholder group will select the top 2 logos that they like and provide the firm direction on refining the designs. Once the 2 final designs are approved by the group, then the logos will be submitted to the City Council to for consideration to make the final selection. During the third phase, or somewhat of the final phase in terms of the logo design process, the firm will present the 2 final designs and 2 taglines to the City Council. And again, like I said before, the Council has the final decision on what the logos and the tagline will be for the city. Once the final logo has been selected by the City Council, the firm will write a logo and brand usage policy. This policy is important in order to maintain and ensure consistency and brand recognition. This will be used as an internal document as well as to ensure consistency and proper usage for external partners as well. The 2 top firms selected included Misfit Brands and HCK2 Partners. Misfit Brands it's a group formed from 2 different agencies, ARIO Agency and also the Atkins Group. The Atkins Group, most people might know that name. They've been around for many years and are very prominent in the marketing and design world. The Misfit Brands describe themselves as a 4-person brand strategy and design consultancy. And again, that's how they describe themselves. They have more than 11 years of experience with municipalities, EDCs, and CVBs across the state of Texas. They've worked with more than 35 different public agencies and more than 50 private companies as well. They are very familiar with the Duncan area, and their company is located in Dallas. In order to walk through the phases that we spoke about earlier in terms of the process, the logo development process, their estimated cost for deliverables is $12,500. Here's an example of some of the different cities that they've worked with. You can see up there the town of Addison, and you can see the list up there that includes some different cities. And these are just a few of them. The second firm that was identified and interviewed was, as I said, HCK2 Partners, and they described themselves as a 40-person marketing and communication agency. They have over 19 years of experience working in both the private and public sectors. They worked with 11 different cities or public agencies, as well as more than 200 private companies. As you know, they are familiar with the Duncanville area as well, as they did work very closely with the Cedar Hill in terms of their logo development and branding, and also they are located in the town of Addison. Their estimated cost for logo design is $23,500. Did you have a question there?
Well, I just want to say that there's a difference in price, and a big difference. And HCK2, I'm familiar with. I think they were also the agency on the Best Southwest branding.
Yes.
As well as Cedar Hill.
Yes, sir.
They did a good job, but.
And really what we found, this is something that we did find, and I was going to talk to this earlier, but is you're looking at an agency that is leaner, and that's really the difference. One that has more staff, that has more bells and whistles, and then you just have an agency that's kind of leaner and really gets down to the nitty-gritty real fast.
Well, what it brought out to me was the fact that it's more than just coming up with a logo design. It's got to be something that will fit our community based upon all of the things we're striving for, and there's a lot of components to it that they go into the design. So it's not just having the school or the local college to come up with some designs. There is a lot more to it, as I saw when we're working on that.
Exactly, and that's what, when we discussed this with council, and I discussed this with council back in May, that was one thing that we talked about. What were those advantages of using a private firm and a professional firm? And really, we do want that professional touch, because it's not just an image. It's about positioning the brand. It's about identifying what our opportunities are and be able to move that forward for the city, for economic development, as well as tourism. So what are the next steps? First of all, I'm sure that council would like to know where the funding's been identified. And the proposed FY17-18 economic development budget has appropriated funds for the logo design and branding materials. There's about $25,000 that's been appropriated for that. The second step this evening would be to select the marketing firm for the logo design. And based on the city experience as well as the affordability of it, both firms, I think, could offer a good product, but I think that for the affordability aspect of it, that the staff does recommend Misfit Brands.
Well, let's be copyrighted as soon as we get it done.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Because that's been a big problem in the past with some things. People coming in and taking the Duncanville logo and just using it. And we certainly need to copyright it.
And that's where the logo usage and brand policy will come in. And also with that, we'll get those files. There have been, in some communities, they have problems with their logos not having the right files, the EPS files and that type of thing. And this will all be included in there. So it'll include everything from the correct font to use, the correct color to use, how it's supposed to be positioned, where it's supposed to be positioned, and then your alternatives in terms of the color usage. Grayscale as well as colored.
And with the Best Southwest, they had 2 or 3 different designs depending upon what you're going to use it for. They were basically the same, but the way they fit into the material and all of that, they were a little bit different, but they were all identifiable as that one brand.
That's correct. And as the stakeholder group meets, they will have that option, and then we'll bring that recommendation forward to council. One thing that we really want to ensure in the entire process, and when we get to the final steps, is that the logo that we choose, that it really performs well across all mediums, that it works well in embroidery, it works well in print, it works well on ads, websites, those type of things. And a lot of times you get fancy logos that have multiple colors, which the cost goes up to reproduce those, as well as they're just not as clear when you try to reproduce those in different mediums. And then finally, this evening, staff is asking City Council to... Oh, no, we don't. Just to ask...
I would like to know, too, if this format, the stakeholder group, and what we were proposing, if that is agreeable.
Yes, and how you would like to handle the appointment or nomination of the 3 residents to the stakeholder group. So how City Council would like to handle that. So yes, sir. So with that, what I'd like to do is ask City Council for your direction in terms of what firm that you, kind of giving the overview that you feel comfortable with.
How many staff are going to be on this stakeholders group?
There's actually been 3 that so far that have been identified in terms of the interview process, so up to 5, but no more than 5, approximately 3 or 4 or so. We want to keep, the group needs to be very small.
So are they going to be voting, excuse me, voting members?
We would decide that.
I'm asking what she's
In terms of-
imagining
In terms of voting members
for the stakeholders committee.
No, they'll just be there as liaisons
So
and
3 members, 3 citizens will be the voting members.
right. It'll be a collaborative effort, but yes, they will have the say in right.
Decision making. Okay.
That's correct.
So again, what's the purpose of the staff?
To represent the different departments and the needs that the different departments have in terms of such as economic development and what the logo needs to apply towards the EDC as well as the Parks Department. They have an interest as well.
But they won't vote on the final section.
They will just provide input in terms of what they feel like the needs are for that department for the future.
Are we requiring them to be residents of Duncanville? The staff members that are on this committee?
No, sir.
Your staff, it's just to provide technical input and advice. Because we're the ones that are going to have to implement then the branding initiatives. So the staff needs to have some input in that. Plus, as Jessica said, the staff is the ones that are going to know where the logo is going to be used and then the different varieties and marketing and putting it on advertisements. Our PIO is going to use it significantly. It's going to go on vehicles. It's going to go on water towers. So the staff needs to have that input and provide technical expertise.
And I totally agree with that, but I think also the component of them being residents of Duncanville, in my opinion, just should be considered. Because they may work here, but they go home and they are Burleson, Argyle, Cleveland, wherever. But the people that live here, this logo is going to represent us.
Well, that's what the 3 citizens are.
Well, and I agree with that, but I mean, it's 3 citizens, but it's 5 staff.
That's kind of
No,
over. Yeah.
it wouldn't be 5, it's probably 3. And to require it to require the staff person to be a Duncanville resident then takes away my ability to decide who's going to be on that, who's the staff person's going to be. Because now I can't necessarily put the person who's got the expertise on there.
Out of 3? You can't? 3 would be a sufficient number for you to do that?
I would put 3 staff on there, yes.
Well, I don't think it should be more staff than citizens.
Staff they're your background representatives. And what you're saying is that the staff cannot be somebody who is dedicated to their job and representing Duncanville. they're less than enthusiastic about Duncanville because they don't live in Duncanville, and I disagree with that.
Well, I
Staff,
didn't
if
say any
staff's
of
got
those
a job,
things.
then they're gonna do to the best of their ability to serve the job. So, I don't know why a residency would be required.
Well, I certainly wouldn't want more staff than residents.
If you'd like to pick 5 residents, that's fine.
Well, I
I
thought
mean, I'm not saying that we're gonna put 5 staff on there, but
Well, I would think the 3 residents would want as much input as they could get in terms of staff, so they know what the logos have got to do.
that you can get input from staff without having staff on a committee.
But they're not voting.
They're not voting. I'm just gonna ask you for information if you're the staff. That's all they're doing. They're just providing information. Because the citizens aren't gonna really know
Well,
where the
if
logos
we're
are gonna
putting
go.
citizens on, if you say 5, that would be 1 from each district. I would assume that you would find someone who had some background in that area, that you wouldn't just, I would assume that would be what your thoughts are. If you're saying that you're going to get people who,
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I think the staff of the city is gonna know more than somebody I pick that,
maybe you, but I would pick someone who had some background in layout, designs, advertising. I mean,
You talk about specific,
see, I just don't agree that we don't have people in Duncanville who are every bit as capable, every bit.
are you talking about citizens or, well, I would hope that's what would happen. You know, on the Economic Development Board, they kind of slotted that for the specialty of the people that are gonna serve on that board. Architect, real estate, whatever. And I certainly hope that the selection, when this council decides to select how many ever people you want, I hope that we take that into consideration, not just somebody that wanted to serve on a board or commission and didn't have a little bit of background in what they were doing.
Yeah, I see the staff is great at putting things together, getting the background, do the legwork, making the presentations. Kind of what you do right now.
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
What are you asking for tonight?
If there's one of the firms that the council would like to select to move
Okay.
forward with.
Let's tackle that problem. That's the issue tonight.
We can't.
We can
wasn't on
give
the
a nod to
agenda.
it's
to
not,
our
it's
preference.
not, all you
Just
really do is,
give
all I'm
to-
looking
yeah.
for is a consensus from you.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't require council approval to approve the contract. I'm just looking for a consensus from you as to which firm you prefer to go with.
Misfits.
It would not take.
We've looked at, and as Jessica said, we've looked at Misfits, at what they've done. We're pleased with what they've done. They seem to have the expertise. The things they've done for other communities looks good, looks professional. They're cheaper than HDK2. We suggest them.
And I would agree with that.
I like the 12,500.
Me too.
yeah.
We do.
Okay, I've heard, what, 3?
Me
I'm
Is
good.
everybody else?
She
4,
said this.
5?
And that's all we needed at this point.
Okay.
We'll finalize with them a contract, and then we'll come back to you at some point as to put together a group, but think about how you want to do that in the meantime.
Okay, you got it. Okay, the next item in our work session, briefing session is an executive session. We've got 2 items. One is City Council shall convene the executive session pursuant to section 5510701 of the Texas Local Government Code to seek legal advice from the city attorney regarding attendance at executive sessions of boards and commissions by members of the city council. And item number 2 is City Council shall convene into closed executive session pursuant to section 551.071 of the Texas Local Government Code to seek legal advice from the city attorney regarding Senate Bill 1004 enacted in the regular 85th legislative session. So at this time, I'm going to adjourn our first two items, the session on that, and I'll call the city council meeting to order. Our first order of business tonight will be our invocation, and it will be led by Pastor Frank Alegria. He's the senior pastor of the First United Methodist Church of Duncanville. Following that, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance to our flags. So at this time, will you please stand?
Let's pray. Almighty God, as always, we give you thanks for another day of life, for life is precious and fragile. Lord, there's a lot of cities that have been affected by the recent hurricanes. Help us to help them. Guide us to be instruments of hope for all those cities and for others. Lord, Duncanville has a great history, but our city has an even a greater future. Guide our city leaders to lead, to be strong and of good courage, and to know that our desire is to be involved in your plans for this community. Oh Lord, so much is on our plate, so much to discuss and to deliberate and ultimately even decide. So guard and guide our minds, our hearts, and our souls. For this and much more we pray in your Son's holy name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge the allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge the allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Next item, I'm going to dispense with mayor's report tonight. The next item will be 1B, which is council members' reports. Do we have any council member reports? Seeing none, city manager's report.
I have no report tonight.
City manager has no report. We have two proclamations tonight to be presented. One is for the National Night Out, and the second one is for the National Crime Prevention Month. So at this time, we'll take the National Night Out for the first one, and I will ask Chief Brown and Officer Doug Sisk to come down. Get situated here. National Night Out, it is a big thing across our nation. I believe it started up in Minnesota, and during the summer months, it's fairly cool at night up there, but it was a little bit warm for Texas. So several states, I think, changed the date for the National Night Out so that people wouldn't all fall out when they came out in mid-summer night. And so we have prepared one for the National Night Out, which is coming up right 1st of October. And the proclamation we've prepared tonight reads, whereas National Night Out was introduced by the National Association of Town Watch in 1984 as a national program which would be coordinated by local crime prevention agencies and organizations that would involve the entire communities at one time, and whereas over 38.1 million people in 16,540 communities from all 50 states, U.S. territories, Canadian cities, and military bases worldwide have participated in National Night Out, and whereas National Night Out is designated to heighten crime and drug prevention awareness, generate support for and participation in local anti-crime programs, and whereas the traditional lights on and front porch visuals remain as part of National Night Out, activities have expanded considerably over the years to include block parties, cookouts, parades, visits from our local police and sheriff's departments, festivals, neighborhood walks, safety fairs, contest rallies, and meetings, and whereas National Night Out is a popular and effective vehicle in heightening awareness, enhancing police, community relations, and volunteer morale. Now therefore, I, David L. Green, Mayor of the City of Duncanville, Texas, do hereby proclaim October the 3rd, 2017 as National Night Out in the City of Duncanville, and urge all citizens to join the Duncanville Police Department in being a part of the National Night Out, largest annual crime drug prevention event. The benefits to the community will extend well beyond one night. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We'd like to invite all the citizens out to the Duncanville Rec Center, October 3rd from 5 to 8, where we're going to do our National Night Out event. That way it's inside, don't have to worry about mosquitoes, temperature, it's all inside. We will have In-N-Out Burger there, serving burgers as long as they last from 5:30 to 7:30, and then we'll have a lot of different tables set up with people providing safety and security tips for citizens in Duncanville. And then some like touch a truck kind of thing out in the parking lot with fire trucks and the police cars and stuff.
Thank you very much. We appreciate our police department and the support they give us each and every day.
Chief.
Whereas the vitality of the city of Duncanville depends on how safe we keep our homes, neighborhoods, schools, workplaces, and communities. And whereas crime and fear of crime destroy our trust in others and in civic institutions, threatening the community's health, prosperity, and quality of life. And whereas citizens of all ages must be made aware of what they can do to prevent themselves and their families, neighbors, and coworkers from being harmed by crime. And whereas citizens of all ages must be made aware of the dangers of crime and how they can protect themselves from becoming victims. And whereas the personal injury, financial loss, and community deterioration resulting from crime are intolerable and require investments from the whole community, we must teach citizens how to target harden to make themselves, homes, and businesses harder targets to criminal activity. And whereas crime prevention initiatives must include self-protection and security, they must also go beyond those two things to promote collaborative efforts to make neighborhoods safer for all ages and to develop positive opportunities for young people. And whereas adults must invest time, resources, and policy support in effective prevention and intervention strategies for youth, and adults must make sure to engage teens in programs to drive crime from their communities. And whereas effective crime prevention programs succeed because of partnerships with law enforcement, other government agencies, civic groups, schools, faith communities, businesses, and individuals as they help to nurture communal responsibility and instill pride in the community. Now, therefore, I, David L. Green, Mayor of the City of Duncanville, Texas, do hereby proclaim October 2017 as Crime Prevention Month in the City of Duncanville, and urge all citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, and businesses to invest in the power of prevention and work together to make Duncanville
Mayor and Council, on behalf of the men and women of the Duncanville Police Department, I'd like to thank you for this proclamation. Crime prevention is an extremely important part of what we do as a police department. Educating our public on how to protect themselves is very, very important to your safety. We're very fortunate to have a crime prevention officer who's been with our city for 30 years. Doug does a tremendous job. I'm very proud of the work that he does, and I'd like for Doug to just say a few words about what he actually does. Thank you, Chief. As it says, we want to get more people involved, neighborhoods involved, businesses involved. So if your neighborhood's not involved in Neighborhood Crime Watch, please reach out to me. Let's get your neighborhood involved. If your business is not involved in it, let me know. We try to work with the Chamber of Commerce and have business crime watch meetings and try to have them at different places. We can come around to businesses and do some training with your employees to make your businesses safer. And like I said, do neighborhood crime watch. We can do home security surveys. We do our Citizens Police Academy class. We've got class 55 going on right now. We do our Citizen on Patrol program. So we do a variety of programs. So if you want to get involved, just contact me and we'll figure out where to get you involved to have you help us be part of the crime prevention programs. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Yes, sir. Our next item is item number 3, and that's the citizen input. I have several cards here. I will call on you as I have received the cards. I will ask that you please give your name and address for the city secretary for the records. Incidentally, tonight, we've had 2 public hearings on the budget and the tax rate and things like that. So tonight, we're going to adopt our budget and our master fee schedule and the tax rate, things like that. But that tonight is not a public hearing. So if any of you wanted to speak on one of these items, I will welcome you to come out and speak after, for our 2-minute period after we go through the cards here. But there will not be time allocated because all the council doing is tonight is considering and voting on the items. So if you want to come up and speak on a particular item after we complete the cards, we will welcome you to come up and do that. The first card I have tonight is Dario Corsetto.
Good evening, council member. And my name is Dario Corsetto. I live in 900 Hideaway in De Soto. I am native of Monastirolo di Savigliano, and I am the founder of the sister city with Duncanville. The new sister city commission here in Duncanville gave untrue information, although the proof of the truth it was provided. The city of Monastirolo did not make any agreement for any official sister city visit next year. For the past 2 meetings in August and September, the president of the Sister City Commission here, Sandy Cherokee, reported private, personal discussion and arrangement with Marco Cavaglia, making everyone believe it was an agreement with the city of Monastirolo and with a non-existing committee, because it does not exist in Italy, for an official trip in April 2018. I spoke with Monastirolo council member and members of the junta, and no one was aware of this arrangement. Mayor pro tempore Antonio Procchietto, who was one of the promoters of this, and the council member for culture Stefania Bosio stated they spoke with the mayor Marco Cavaglia, who confirmed that his visit in March 2016 to Duncanville was a private visit, and all his communication with Sandy Cherokee was regarding her desire to visit Italy with some of her friends next year, but without no official visit or ceremony. Likewise, I have been in the past to council, pointed out that there was an error on the minutes of the meeting 25th of July 2017. That was not corrected. Today I spoke with the city manager, and he said that the city council would like to have that error. So I am really puzzled why apparently they don't want to report the truth. We should be able to address issues with a mutual respect and a civil dialogue to build a more human world and stay away from hatred. Thank you.
Wesley Jameson.
Wesley Jameson, 1214 Lady Lane. I appreciate you pointing out that this is kind of our last attempt to even address the tax rate in the budget, because for the last two public hearings, I've heard a lot of comments, a lot of people making suggestions on sharpening pencils, improving efficiencies, finding some way to help reduce this, this budget. After absorbing a little over $3 million windfall because of the increase in property values, I've seen no changes to the budget. I've seen no attempt to even reduce spending in any way. I've seen nothing take place that would cause any hope for someone who is either disabled, a homeowner, over 65, to look forward to some type of relief in the form of an increase or an improvement in the exemptions that we are availed of in other taxing entities. Duncanville is one of the higher taxed entities in the area. Although our property values are somewhat lower, our property tax rate is higher, and at 25% of the overall tax bill, the citizens of Duncanville pay a heavy price for the services that we receive. I implore on you that if you have a fiscally conservative bent, of which I know some on the council purport to be fiscal conservatives, then a vote for this budget betrays all allegiance to those principles. So please, if you would, reconsider this budget and come back with something that's a bit more conservative for the people who have to pay these bills. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mary Dingman.
I'm Mary Dingman. I live on Thrush Avenue in Duncanville, which is the older part of Duncanville. I have to reiterate what Mr. Jameson just said is felt by a good majority of my neighborhood, surrounding areas of my neighborhood. We haven't seen a whole lot of improvement for the older, original Duncanville residents areas being portrayed having improvements, road improvements, and that's one reason why I'm wondering where the $10 is going to come from on my water bill to pay for a road improvement that I don't see. Again, my main sentiment and everything is to take consideration of the people that live in those areas that have been here. I personally have been here for 65 years in Duncanville. It's important to be able to stay. I own my home. I shouldn't have to sell my home to go to a more adequate city that will help take care of my neighborhood also and everything. So I would hope the council will take in consideration of the people that actually have founded and worked with this city to try to help improve it and everything, and just not pad somebody else's pocketbook to help take care of us. I'd like to see that people are being held responsible for the way that they spend our money, and hopefully reside using the people of our neighborhood to contract anything that might be able to maintain. You know, use our money for our people, pay our people. They'll take care of us. You know, we don't need any outside, you know, cities coming in and taking responsibility for things that our people here should be able to do. And also, I'd hope you'd consider those statistics. I would like to see more people being representative of our neighborhoods. As I can look out here now, I don't really see people from my neighborhood. The majority of the people do not know about this city council and the meetings. More information needs to be sent out on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, something to inform these people, to educate them that they need to come in and speak up. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Patricia Ebert.
Patricia Ebert, 115 South Greenstone Lane, Duncanville. Common sense budget. That's really what I support. And we could learn from the library and follow their lead. Right now, they're sponsoring a citywide, entire community contest to design the library card, and the winner gets a prize. So we can parlay that to a lot of departments in the city. And that's like if you need a logo or a tagline for the field house, citywide contest. You don't need consultants. Use the city. Winner gets a prize. Same thing for the city logo and the city tagline. If we need something like that to refresh or revamp, citywide contest. Winner gets a prize.
Thank you. Grady W. Smithy, Jr.
Grady Smithy, 1806 Cedar Hill Road, Duncanville resident since July of 1950. That's about, what now, guys, 67 years? Been around a long time. And I've developed, when I was sitting up here where y'all are, I developed a theory, and that was that, that you'd never go broke underestimating the courage of councils or state reps or national representatives. But I got to take my hat off you guys. Y'all are doing this year what we should have done a long time ago. You're taking care of some of the things that we deferred. We didn't have the money we thought. We always tried to save a half, a cent here or a half cent there on taxes. And we let the streets go downhill pretty badly. We took in, an area where the streets were substandard to start with, and we didn't really improve them all that much. There's a whole lot we haven't done that we could do. And y'all, I want to commend you for your courage. So I exempt you from what I said earlier about councils and other elected representatives. I appreciate your courage in doing that, and I appreciate what you're doing here. And I want to tell you something. About 45 years ago, one of our vice presidents, I hate to quote a Republican, said something about the nattering nabobs, ignore the nattering nabobs of negativity. Some of y'all may remember who that was. I'm not going to tell you. You can look it up if you don't know. But I appreciate the fact that you have the courage to ignore those things, because nobody wants to pay taxes. I don't want to pay taxes. Nobody wants to pay taxes. On the other hand, I never had, when I was on the council, one single person come up to me and say, don't pay that 55% of your city's budget that goes to public service, to police and fire. Not one time in 22 years did that occur to me. So I appreciate what y'all are doing, and I thank you for your work, and I know it's an awful hard job to get the budget to where you got it to this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. That's all the cards I have. If anyone else would like to speak at this time, please come forward. Seeing none, then we'll proceed on to the next item, which is the consent item, which is item number 4. There are 2 items on the consent items, A and B, and I'll ask the city secretary to read the captions on those, please.
Item 4A, consider the minutes for the September 5th, 2017 City Council regular meeting. Item 4B, consider approval of a resolution authorizing procurement of sanitary sewer TV cameras and equipment from CLS Sewer Equipment Company in the amount of $109,330,000.
Council, you've heard the captions read. Oh, wait a minute. Before we vote,
Move approval.
I guess we need approval in the second before we vote. Chair will entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a second and a motion, so please vote. Okay, thank you. Well, this is legislative at this point. The city manager reminded me that Dr. Dotson is not here tonight. He has called, and he was headed down here, and he's delivering a baby right now, and he hopes to be here before the meeting's over, but that's the reason he's not here. Going to item number 5, and 5A is to consider an ordinance of the city of Duncanville, Texas, approving and adopting a budget for the city for the fiscal year October 1, 2017 through September 30, 2018, providing that expenditures for said fiscal year shall be made in accordance with said budget. Richard?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll do a very brief overview of where we're at in the adoption of the budget. As you can see, we started working on the budget back in March, met with the departments during March and April, all the way down through our two public hearings, which were held on August 15th and September the 5th. And tonight we're here to approve and adopt not only the tax rate but the budget. So very quickly, if we look at our budget in its entirety, we have $62.4 million in revenues. About 23% of that comes in the form of property taxes, a little over 16% in sales tax. And then you can see the other slices of the pie that make up the revenue sources. If you look at those revenues by fund, a little over 50% go to the general fund, and about 28% come from the utility fund, and then the remainder from the other funds like solid waste and traffic safety and improvement. If you look at expenditures, they total $63.2 million, and as we know, the city is heavy with personnel. That's one of the things that's common to all cities. So about 35% of our budget goes to salary and benefits, and then services comprise about 36%. Those services encompass things that we don't have people here to do, things that we hire other people to do, and then that also encompasses our utilities such as electricity and water, etc. Looking at our expenditures by fund, you can see again that 53% of our expenditures are spent in the general fund, and that's primarily for public safety, and then the utility fund about 29%, and then the other pieces. So let's look at the general fund, which is the major fund that everyone wants to sort of focus in on, and unfortunately it cut off the bottom part somehow or other on the slide here, which I don't know why that happened, but you can see that in the fiscal year 18 budget, we've got about, for our operating revenues, about $30.9 million. And I apologize that that slid off the bottom there. And if we look at the general fund in terms of the expenditures, you can see that we're, for our operating expenses, we're pretty close to that same amount on revenue. And of course, in fiscal year 18, we've got $1.3 million of our expenditures are transferred to the innovation fund that's coming from the debt service fund, and then $1.3 million of our expenditures are transfer to the innovation fund that'll be reserved for street maintenance for FY19. So approximately $2,375,000 of our expenditures are being reserved for the innovation fund for other uses. Real quickly, if you look at our utility fund outlook, we've got our projected fiscal year end 18 at 125 days of fund balance. And I remind you that within that $6.4 million, we have $1.5 million that's reserved for our automated meter infrastructure that we hope to implement as soon as feasible. Remind you that we did avoid or reduce our capital improvement projects in prior years in order to avoid rate increases, and so we've had several rate increases, and we have another rate increase this year to pass along our expenditures that our increased expenditures from water and sewer costs. In the utility fund, we also have solid waste, and we're proposing rate increases there. We anticipate having a 43-day fund balance at the end of fiscal year 18. which is really not quite adequate. We really should have 60 days of fund balance if we were on target for our financial objectives. And so with that, that's a very quick overview. There is this motion that I've written out that if there is a motion to approve the budget, this needs to be verbatim, if you will, as according to state law.
Leave that up there, Richard, for a little while. The motion. I wanted to make a comment. We're talking about reducing budget, and I understand, and I think I am a conservative. But when we look at the pressures that have been put on our city, the $1.3 million that's reserved for the new water meters, those will be the water meters where we don't have to have employees going out and reading the meters. They will be electronically transmitted in, and it will give you a much better reading. You can go online and see how much water you used at any time and kind of calculate where you are. If you spot something that doesn't look right, you can call in and say, I may have a leak or something, and the city can get on it immediately. So that was reserved from a couple of refunds that we had, one-time refunds that we're not going to have again. And then the big item that we have that has really bothered us, and we had to do something about it, is we had a survey done of all of our streets and alleys, all of our roadways in the city. And before, we would go out and we would have our public works department heads, our engineers, look at the streets, and if it looked like it needed resurfacing, then we would determine and rank them and then resurface according to that manner. Well, we were spending maybe $500,000–600,000 a year in street maintenance. Once we got this survey completed and we knew what the base below the street looked like, we determined that just to maintain the same level of street maintenance, that's not build new streets, that's not do anything, but try to maintain our streets at the current level, it was going to require, I think, $2.5 million this year and $3.5 million a year going forward. Some of our streets are getting old. They're going to have to be redone, but this is what it showed that we were going to have to do unless we wanted to see a lot of street deterioration. So when we throw those figures into the mix, yes, we did have an increase in our budget this year, but where did we do? Do we want to cut that out and let our streets continue to deteriorate? And as in your own budget, your household costs keep going up a certain percentage, whether it be 2% or 3% a year, the cost of materials, the cost of labor and everything. So that's the dilemma that your council's been working through. And there's not a real good answer on how, if you want to maintain a quality city, how we're going to be able to do that. So that's the budget you see right now. Are there any further comments from the council? Councilmember LeBlanc.
Mayor and council, I do agree with the mayor that the streets and the things that, some of the things that are considered in the budget are necessities for us to maintain our way of life and things that we need here in Duncanville. I'm totally in agreement with that. We appreciate our police department, and we know that we need protection, and our fire department, we know we need them to be there when we call. But I would like to make a motion at this point that we not approve this budget in its current state because of other things that are concealed within the budget, and that we reconvene and meet before the deadline to try to address some things that are there in the budget.
Okay, there's a motion and a second on the floor. Councilman Bowman.
I'd like more information before I vote on that.
And that's why I think we need to,
Obviously, you have some issues.
Yeah.
Do you have any that you can share?
well, he talked about salaries, 35% of the budget, salaries and benefits. And our salaries that we're paying employees here are increasing the economic status of other cities because of the lack of people that live here in the city. And so we're funding and making other cities rich from our taxes. So that's one of the things.
Any further comment? Okay, go ahead.
We have a lot of things. I agree too. There's some things that we need to spend money on, and some things that don't. The professional services, Parks Master Plan, Fieldhouse website, $19,500 for a website. City Council Retreat Facilitator, $10,000. Leadership Training, $12,000. TIF Development, $27,000. $50,000 for a conference center feasibility study. There's I don't think that we need to have as many of these professional services that we've got. We can cut some of those out. When they talk about the roads, what we did was, this was about 3 years ago, they hired a van that had an x-ray machine of sorts, and it went over all of the streets. It was $80,000. And they came back and told us, there's some things that you can see on the surface and some things that you can see deeper. And so it wasn't just the things that you could see on the surface. They told us about the things that you could see deeper. And, my thoughts on this are that in your households or in your businesses, there's a lot of things that you see need to be fixed or repaired or replaced, and you have to put them on a list, and you don't do them all at once. You decide this year it's a new air conditioner. Next year it's a new paint job on the house or the business. You don't do everything at once. So I think that some of this, absolutely, and basically we spent 2 full days in budget meetings, and we listened to what was being said. There was one point where the city manager told us that he didn't feel comfortable going on with the budget until we came up with some kind of funding for streets. And, kind of surprised, and we talked about either increasing the ad valorem tax rate or a monthly rate, and that was the $10. I don't feel comfortable with that either, and we keep saying we are going to talk about it, we're going to talk about it, and that's what we said in the public hearing. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. We haven't talked about it. We've had 2 budget meetings, and we haven't talked about it since those budget meetings. We haven't talked about it up here. We've listened to people, and we've heard, but we as a council have not talked about it again to go back over some of these things. I've seen nothing cut back, nothing. And I believe the same way, that all of this is not necessary. Some of it can be cut back. And I agree. I think that we need to have another discussion. The state law says that we have to have our budget in by October 1st. So we need to get with it and have a discussion about it.
Actually, the city charter requires that the budget be approved 10 days before the end of the fiscal year. That gives us today, tomorrow, and Thursday. It would have to be passed at a minimum by Thursday to be in compliance with our charter.
Okay. Well, then I guess we need to get with it.
We can, it will violate the TOMA Act. You need 72 hours to
Well,
advertise
it's 72
a meeting.
hours before Wednesday. No, let's see. So you're saying by Thursday?
Thursday would be the last day that we could vote on the budget and be in compliance with the city charter.
Okay, well, then Thursday's it. That's 72 hours.
No, you would not be in compliance.
Why not?
Because Thursday would be 48 hours.
Today
From
is
today.
Tuesday. Okay, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So, well, so what would you suggest then, attorney?
At this point, in order to comply with the charter, I would suggest that my suggestion would be that the budget that's been presented either be approved or be approved with modifications tonight. If you wanted to have a motion to amend the budget going forward, the council has the authority to do that going forward, but because of your limited time frame, I would recommend that something be approved tonight in order to ensure compliance.
Well, this wasn't thought out very well, because we have not had any discussions. And we've told the people over and over and over that we would talk about it, and we haven't. So you're saying pass the budget as is and then try to amend it?
You can pass it as is. You could potentially have a motion to approve the budget with specific amendments if that's your preference, but I would recommend that something be passed tonight. And then, of course, you do have the ability to amend the budget going forward, but something needs to be passed tonight in order to ensure you're in compliance with your charter.
Councilwoman Thomas.
I would like to address the issue that we have not had discussions. We have had plenty of discussions. We've come up here and sat for 8 hours having discussions on budgets. We've been talking about this. So, the budget process is it's advertised. You can come in. You can see when we're doing it. You can come in and sit and listen hour after hour. And our time's valuable too. We're volunteers. And so we could come up here voluntarily and listen to the budget and do our best effort to get the best budget that we can. So to say that we haven't had that opportunity I don't see where we haven't not had that opportunity. So for the $10 street assessment, that was just a number that was thrown out there. The discussion was, for every dollar we spend, for every dollar that we ignore today on our road improvement, it will cost us $25 later. Now, that we can't afford, ever. And the example of Arlington was brought up. They are trying to dig out of deferring their maintenance on their streets. And we do not want to go. We want to be responsible. We want to be grown-ups in the room. We want to take care of the essentials. And I think we can all agree that streets are essential. So anyway, getting back to the $10, that was thrown out there. And in the budget is a placeholder. We haven't voted on anything yet. It's a placeholder. That's part of we're not voting on the $10. We're not voting on that $1.3 million to be firm. It's just a placeholder to say, if this passes, this is what the budget will look like. So the staff said, we're going to, we realize this is an issue. We're going to go back out and we're going to get some more plans, and we'll bring it back to the council. And we talked about it in being in the late fall or the early winter when we get this. So we're still talking about it. But I think we could all agree that we need streets and that we want to pay $1 today, not $25 later. I think we can agree with that. And in my neighborhood, we have failing streets. Do you know that in Duncanville they have failing streets, streets that are failed, streets that need to be replaced? And that should not be. But because other councils didn't make those hard decisions or didn't have the information to make those hard decisions, we're at the point where we have to make those. So is it going to be expensive? It's relative. It's going to be expensive, but it's going to be way more expensive down the road if we don't address it. So probably have more to say about the budget, but that's all I have to say at this juncture.
Okay. Is your light on again, or did you just turn it off? Okay.
We have not come back and talked as a council since we've heard from the people at the public hearings. We have not. That is simply not true. We have not talked as a council. And I know in those budget meetings that we had, one council member was in Ireland, and, God bless him. I hope he had a good time. and but we didn't get his input. You know, we have Dr. Dotson, who has to deliver babies. He was there one day and one he wasn't. We have a council member that works full-time, and, you know, we should have our meetings not 8 to 5 because people that work cannot attend. So it's not true. We have been in and out, a portion of us, and we have not talked about it since we heard from people who were talking about, I can see a person in the audience who gave us an extensive overview of how they felt. We haven't talked about it. We've talked about none of these things. We say we're going to talk about it. We haven't talked about it. And we did stay. We had 2 days, 2 full days. But that was more or less time to hear. In the past, because I have been on this council since 2005, and we have had discussions where we sat there and actually talked about everything that it was presented to us, and we talked about it. And we heard from different departments, and we went back and forth, and we sent the city manager back to look for 10% decrease in departments and things. So, you know, we didn't do that. We haven't done that. And, you know, you can hear from people. I've heard from my district, and I've heard from some different people in the city that have come up to speak, but we have not had another discussion about the budget since then. Now, you know, I think one thing that we need to make clear is that fire and police, that is civil service, and, you know, that's not something for discussion, but there are other, and I think we all want our fire and the police departments, you know, to do well and flourish. But, you know, I just think that there is a lot of fat in here that can be cut. And I don't think that, you know, there are other cities across the Metroplex who have had their ad valorem tax rollback. We're not. We're leaving it the same. So, I mean, there's all sorts of things that we can do. We have talked, and I think the council member said something about that she would like to see homestead exemptions. We haven't increased the homestead exemptions for over 65 or the exemptions for disabled. I know Dallas County Community College Board, they increased theirs to the maximum amount that the state would allow. And we did get a printout on other cities and what they've allowed, and it's really shameful that we're not doing that. It was almost amusing. My husband and I sat down with our financial planner, and he was embarrassed and asked, he said, "Can I ask you a question?" And we said, "Sure." And he said, "Is there a reason why," he said, he went on the internet, "Is there a reason why Duncanville houses are selling so low, yet your taxes are so high?" And I think that we had someone tell us in the meeting when that came up that, well, you know, because your house is low, that you pay less taxes. No, that's your major investment. You want your house to sell for a high amount. You don't want to have your house not be worth anything. What you want is fair taxes. And there's just a lot of fluff and fat that can be cut out, and it should go for things that need to be done. We've just changed philosophies somewhere along the way, and I don't think that we need all of the professional services that we were talking about. $19,500 for a website is a little ridiculous, and there's on and on consulting fees.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I would like to make a couple of comments. One, most of what is proposed in the increases in the budget is directly related to street maintenance, and that is a result of the pavement management study that was done 2 years ago. We've been talking about this study for a couple of years. When we put it together, we presented the results to council, and we showed that the costs were going to go up significantly to maintain the level that the council chose for street condition. And we said at the time, we don't have a funding mechanism for that. So last year, or the current year budget, actually, when the budget was passed last year, we set aside $1 million out of the fund reserve to pay for this coming year FY18 street maintenance. But we also said at the time that that wasn't going to be enough. But we set that aside. With the increases in revenues and property taxes increased about $800,000, which was on that motion. But the other increases were in the assumed street maintenance fee, which was $1.3 million. And we had increases in sales tax revenues. And we also had an increase in revenues, which is the $1 million that we set aside. We transfer it into FY18 as a revenue, so it's showing as an increase. So that's where most of that increase is related to street maintenance. So when we talked about the street maintenance fee and what we talked about in June at the time when we present what the budget outlook looks like, and we talked with the council, and that is when we were asking for input, and we had discussion about the budget before the budget gets finalized at the end of July. What we talked about with the street maintenance fee was, again, reminding the council that we did not have a source of revenue to pay for that desired level of street maintenance. And what my point to the council about the budget was, I was not willing to propose any other kind of recurring cost to the budget, such as pay raises for employees, unless we had a mechanism for paying for street maintenance in the out years. It would be irresponsible of me to propose a new recurring fee if we didn't have the revenues for it. The discussion and the input from the council was they were willing to look at a street assessment fee. And so we set that amount into the budget. Again, as Councilmember Thomas said, it is a projection. And we were very clear that we were not approving any kind of a fee at that time, and we needed to go back and look at what kind of fee, how it would be done. But there was discussion about an amount that would raise some revenue. It also should be pointed out, and we've pointed it out in the budget presentations already when we've talked about pavement management, that even that amount of money that would be raised by a street assessment fee is still not enough to pay for that desired level of $3.5 million a year. But when we met in August with the council, we again talked about that, and we said we were looking at some other options that would be more equitable type of assessment for street maintenance fees. But again, reminding the council that that was still not going to cover all of it. And so the bottom line, and I was very clear with the council at the time, was that we'll do whatever is allowed. Whatever money we have, that's what we'll do. If we're going to if the council decides not to do a street maintenance fee, then we'll continue to do the historical funding of $500,000 to $600,000 a year, but recognize that the streets are not going to get better. They're going to continue to deteriorate. And at some point, we're going to have more streets failing, and then the cost will be a lot more. So the 1.3 that we have in the budget is a projection, and all of it is being transferred out to FY19 because we have FY18 covered with the $1 million that we set aside from this current year. Along with the increases in other revenues, we've set aside more money, almost $2.5 million, for street maintenance for this coming year. But it does not address the shortfall in the out years. And that was what the discussion was. Any fee that would be approved by the council would be done as a separate mechanism, and it would be done after, I'm sure, significant public input and consideration. But we've had all those discussions, and we've been talking about this for quite a while. And so I just wanted to point out that in the total expenditures in the budget, in the general fund, that are almost a little over $3 million difference between the proposed budget and the current year budget. $1.3 million of that expenditure is the 1.3 that we're showing as a revenue. We're also transferring it out for FY19 because we don't need it for FY18, so it's a transfer out, but that's shown as an expense. $1.9 million is the increase in Public Works budget, primarily due to the street maintenance. $250,000, $250,000 increase in the budget is in the police budget, and that's primarily due to pay raises and salary increases and some cost increases in our regional dispatch. And then $350,000 increase in the fire budget, again, due primarily to pay and compensation, and then some equipment expenditures. Most of the other departments are pretty well flat or very little increase, and the increases there are due to the compensation that we are increasing pay for this coming year. So when we look at making cuts, we can make cuts in the budget, and we've talked about that before, but it also means that there are some services that we would need to reduce. And that's a question, but that is a council policy discussion.
Councilwoman Thomas.
Yes, Mayor, I'm all for a robust discussion about the budget, but in the 9th, 11th hour, I don't think it's appropriate. We've had several workshops where we could have had a robust discussion. And we have state and city laws that determine when we have to have this budget passed. And these aren't new, these are the same. And the city starts, and I have voted against, I'll come right out with, I have voted against the budget twice since I've been on the council. And I'm telling you that I don't disagree with anyone if they have a reason to vote on it. But as far as the robust discussion, I don't see that we have an opportunity to do that. And to do it now on the dais doesn't do credit to the staff that's been working on this since March. So I know the budget now that I've been on the council about 4 years. I know the process. I go to the city manager and I say, hey, city manager, before March. And usually, hopefully I do it during the council retreat. I get ahead, I get in there. I go to my council members, I talk to them, I get ahead, I get in there. And a lot of times it's not 1 year, sometimes it's not 2 years, sometimes it's 3 years before I can get any traction on an issue. But that's the budget process. It's turning a ship is what it is. And so we're just one, I'm just one member of 7. And I have to bring all my other council members along to see the way I see things if I want a budget change. And many times, all I'm saying is that, and I'm just doing what I'm saying I shouldn't do, is a robust discussion about the budget. That should have been done. And if council members thought that wasn't done, now is not the time to ask for it. The time to ask for it was when it could have been effectual.
I've got Councilwoman Jameson, and then we're going to vote on the motion, and I believe the motion was to delay. Councilman, you made the motion.
To not to approve in its current state, so okay. I don't know if that's.
All right, okay. Yeah. All right. Councilwoman Jameson, and then we're gonna vote.
2 comments. I forgot to say, we also have on here 5 new employees. We don't need 5 new employees. And something was said about giving credit to the staff for working on the budget. I'd like to give credit to the taxpayers for footing the bill. I think that we were elected up here to represent the taxpayers. And we need to run the city, but we need to run it efficiently, and we need to also take into consideration those people on fixed incomes. We have very many people in our city that are older, and we do not offer the same exemptions for 65 and over and for disabled. There's other things we could do for taxpayers. And this isn't about staff. And this is about people who live here and their taxes and what they pay and what they get in return. And the robust conversation that we're having right now is better now than never. I didn't know that the dates were that impending, but I doubt that anything will be changed on it, because that's what, and I knew it. I knew it when they were saying during those public hearings, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. We're going to talk about it. We didn't talk about it. We did not talk about it after we heard from citizens. It's not just about staff and us. It is also about hearing from citizens and how they feel about it. And I don't know about you, but I heard from my district. And that's part of the discussion. And they aren't at the public at the budget meetings all day long. And really, you're getting a presentation at the budget meetings of where we stand, where they think, where staff thinks you ought to be, and what they their considerations are. So there's conversation that should be had with taxpayers, people who live here and pay the taxes. And that's what I'm saying. We did sit here and say, we'll talk about it. And we have not talked about it since those budget meetings. So I guess that will be, we'll just take the vote.
Councilmember Jameson, did you ask the city manager? Did you ask the city manager to put this on? Mayor, may I have the floor?
Yes, you have the floor.
Did you ask the city manager to put this on the agenda tonight, this meeting, or the meeting before after the first public hearing?
I'm sorry.
Did you ask the city manager to put this agenda item to discuss the budget on this agenda or the previous agenda after the first?
Councilmember Thomas, did you know that we had to have it in by Thursday according to our charter?
Well, yeah.
No, you did not.
Yes, I did.
All right.
Because I've gone through this 5 times.
I did not realize that we had to have it in by, I do have the floor.
We are totally off of topic.
I did not know that we had to have the
Ms.
budget in
Jameson.
by Thursday.
Mrs. Thomas, that's it. The motion on the floor at this time, it's been seconded, is to deny adoption of the budget tonight. A vote yes is a vote to agree with that. A vote no is to not agree with that, and then open it back up for discussion on adopting the budget. So are you prepared to vote, and do you understand the motion? Okay. I've seen there'll be no further discussion, so will you please vote? Okay, the motion failed. We will now, Richard, do you have something else to report on this?
No, I'll
Mayor?
just get back to the slide for the.
Hold it just one moment. Councilwoman Thomas.
Mayor, I move that the proposed budget for the city of Duncanville for fiscal year October 1st, 2017 through September 30th, 2018, providing that expenditures for said fiscal year shall be made in accordance with said budget, be adopted. This budget will raise more revenue from property taxes than last year's budget by an amount of $840,926, which is a 5.62% increase from last year's budget. The property tax revenue to be raised from new property added to the tax roll this year is $58,930.
You've heard the motion made. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Richard, did you have something to report? Is there any further discussion? Please vote. Okay, motion passed. We don't need demonstrations from the audience. Thank you. Item number 5B, consider an ordinance of the City of Duncanville, Texas, levying ad valorem taxes for year 2018 at the rate of 0.758447 per $100 assessed valuation on all taxable property within the city limits of the city as of January 1, 2017, to provide requirements, providing for due and diligent dates together with penalties and interest, and declaring an effective date.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. A quick, brief overview of our tax rate. Our proposed tax rate is the same as it was in the previous year, and Chapter 26 of the Tax Code requires that 2 public hearings on the tax rate be conducted if the proposed rate is higher than the effective tax rate. Our rate was higher than the effective tax rate, so we had the first public hearing on August the 15th, and we had a second public hearing on September the 5th to have citizen input from that. As you can see, our effective tax rate for fiscal year 18 is 0.717895. Our actual tax rate, which is the current tax rate, is 0.758447, and the rollback rate was 0.780079. This is the motion that would need to be made verbatim by state law in order to adopt the current proposed tax rate.
Chair will entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.758447 per $100 valuation, which is effectively a 5.37% increase in the tax rate.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there further discussion on this item? Seeing none, will you please vote? Thank you. Item number C is to consider an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Duncanville, Texas, ratifying the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget, which raises more revenue from property tax than in the previous year, in providing an effective date.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Section 102.007C of the Texas Local Government Code requires a ratification vote on a budget that will raise more revenue from property taxes than the previous year. This vote must be separate from the adoption of the budget or the tax rate. So simply translated, municipalities are required to approve an ordinance that ratifies any budget that generates more revenue from property taxes than the previous year. Because the City of Duncanville has experienced an increase in property valuations, it will generate more revenue even though the tax rate remains the same. Therefore, this ordinance must be approved in compliance with state law. So staff recommends approval of the ordinance of the City of Duncanville, Texas, ratifying the budget for the fiscal year 2017-18, which raises more revenue from property taxes than in the previous year, and providing an effective date.
The chair will entertain a motion concerning item number C.
Does it have specific language?
There's no specific language.
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Please vote. Okay, thank you. Item number D is to consider an ordinance of the City of Duncanville, Texas, approving the fiscal year 2017-2018 master fee schedule, which is attached hereto and incorporated herein as Exhibit A, providing a repealing clause, providing for a severability clause, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Again, this master fee schedule reflects increases or decreases in our current fees, and it also includes some new fees that were previously even needed, things like for the small cell ordinance that we just recently passed. So this master fee schedule is part of the budget, and revenues are based thereon. So Staff recommends approval of an ordinance of the City Council, City of Duncanville, Texas, approving the master fee schedule for fiscal year 17-18.
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor, I've got a question.
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Richard, how often do we update this schedule?
We do the schedule, mass review is part of the budget process every year, but as time goes by, as for instance, if you notice that the way that I put I listed the fee for the street maintenance fee, I put to be determined. And so if in fact we ever pass or determine a rate, we'll come back and amend that. So it's reviewed anytime that there's a need for an increase or a decrease or an adjustment. And we'll have to come back and amend that ordinance to reflect that change.
Are there some of the fees that have not been raised in years? I thought I heard last time that it had been like 5 or 10 years before.
There were quite a few fees that were like tap fees and stuff for water and sewer that have never been adjusted in the 10 years that I've been here in the city. That had adjustments to reflect.
So we could come back later, and if we were looking for ways to get other money.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it can be adjusted at any time.
Okay, any other discussion, comment? Seeing none, will you please vote? Okay, thank you. Item number E is to consider an ordinance of the City of Duncanville, Texas, creating classified positions under civil service in the police and fire departments, providing for a pay scale under civil service, repealing all ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date.
Good evening, everyone. This ordinance is brought to you typically in conjunction with all the budgetary documents. What this ordinance does is establishes the position classifications for the police and fire department, as well as details the pay scale and the lateral entry program details. So this is being brought to you tonight to amend because in the budget we had proposed 3% increase to the police and fire pay scale.
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion? Councilwoman Jameson.
Weren't some of these in conflict with state law? That we hadn't updated it?
This is updated every year. So if there's a position classification change, for example, we add positions, we change the name, we change the pay scale. That's what the ordinance, but we haven't, we update this every year.
So what we're doing now is just updating it?
Right, we're amending the current ordinance because the pay scale has changed. The pay scale is detailed within the ordinance itself.
Okay.
Seeing no further lights, will you please vote? Thank you. Item number F is to conduct a public hearing and consider an ordinance amending the comprehensive zoning ordinance and map as heretofore amended by amending the LR2 local retail 2 zoning to allow a specific use permit for a wireless telecommunications tower, a cellular tower, on John H. Spruce, Abstract 1297, page 870, track 6S-2, more commonly known as 306 West Camp Wisdom Road.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Chastity Allen Benson, City Planner. Introducing the request for a specific use permit for a wireless telecommunications tower. This is not a small cell tower. I know we had a lot of discussion about small cell towers in the right-of-way. This is the macro towers that you see on private property. And so the SUP is coming forward for construction of a 125-foot tall tower on the subject property at 306 West Camp Wisdom. The applicant, or the tower will be a T-Mobile tower. The lease area is approximately 330 feet from Camp Wisdom and approximately 240 feet from the residential area to the south, which does meet the minimum distance requirements per the ordinance. They will have an access drive from Camp Wisdom to access the lease area, and the equipment and tower will be surrounded by a 6-foot-tall masonry wall. The location of the tower is cited as such to minimize conflicts should the property redevelop in the future. There's an existing building on the property, but it is vacant, so there is opportunity for redevelopment in the area, and so the applicant has cited the tower in a manner in which that would not be inhibited. The zoning ordinance states that new towers should be permitted when there is evidence that the existing structures in the area will not allow for co-location. There was a tower map that was included in your packet that it shows different types of towers within 5,000 feet of the property. Based on the information from the applicant, the tower is needed to improve capacity for the areas located at West Camp Wisdom, east of North Greenstone, and west of Oriole Boulevard for both residential and for businesses. The zoning ordinance has specific guidelines in the ordinance as it pertains to towers, such as the 5,000-foot separation. The towers have to be galvanized steel finish. They have to issue a performance bond should the tower be obsolete and have to be removed. And so those are all conditions of the specific use permit, and that was also the recommendation of P&Z that those conditions be included. The exception would be for the 5,000-foot distance. It is within 5,000 feet of another tower, but the evidence provided by the applicant indicates that the need is still there for the new tower. This is the subject property. Again, 306 West Camp Wisdom shows the residential property to the south. It is primarily retail. There are some vacant lots adjacent to the subject property, and there's a electrical substation there, so there's already somewhat utility in nature types of uses. There's the aerial there and the proposed site plan. Again, that's the tower map that I was referencing in terms of the location of other towers in the area. I will note that this tower will also have the capability for co-location, so other users can co-locate on this tower. That prevents the need for additional towers to be constructed. P&Z did unanimously recommend approval of the tower with the less than a 5,000-foot separation between the tower and other towers, and for a 10-year time period. The applicant is present to answer any questions, and they have a brief couple of slides they would like to show as well.
Would the applicant like to come forward and make the presentation?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Peter Cavanaugh. My address is 1620 Handley Drive, Dallas, representing the property owner, which is Real Inn LLC. It's kind of a funny picture. I'm gonna try to get rid of that. We're simply asking to put up a mobile telephone antenna. It's no secret that people are using their phones for much more than those of us who've been around for a long time ever dreamed. I know my wife downloads movies onto her phone, and I get my emails on my phone. I'm sure many of you do as well. So given all the data that phones take on now, we just have to have more infrastructure to serve those phones. The other thing that's important now is, you all know, many people no longer have a landline, and so what this facility will do will basically provide in-home coverage to the properties to the south, east, and west of the site. So that's the primary issue, is just getting stronger coverage in that area. I think I'd stop here. I could probably talk for 20 minutes, but maybe not answer a question that you may have. So I think I'd stop here, simply ask for your approval, and be available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. We may have some. This is a public hearing, so anyone who wishes to speak either for or against the erection of this tower at this spot, please come forward and speak. Okay.
The question is, where exactly is 306? Yeah, I wish I had a pointer.
It appears it's a property approximately across Camp Wisdom from Fire Station 1, and
By
it looks
Kroger.
about 3 or 4 properties to the west of the Kroger Center.
Yes.
No.
No. West is towards Fort Worth.
It's next door to the old Red Hat Nursery, if you know where that is.
Yeah.
Do you remember where the old Red Hat Nursery was? Do you remember where the old Red Hat Nursery was? It's next door to it. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak? If not, the chair will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing.
There's a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Will you please vote? Thank you. The chair now will entertain a motion regarding this item.
Move approval.
There's a motion and a second to move, that's been made to approve this item number F. Is there any discussion? Will you please vote? Thank you. Item number G is to conduct a public hearing and consider an ordinance to adopt Destination Duncanville, a comprehensive plan for the city of Duncanville.
Again, good evening, Mayor and Council. Chastity Allen Benson, City Planner. I'm excited to be before you tonight. Before I bring up our consulting team, Friesen Nichols, I just want to take this opportunity to thank and acknowledge some people that have been vital to this over year-long process that we've been going through with the comprehensive plan. First, the citizens of Duncanville. For everyone who came to the public meetings, wrote something on our vision boards, sent an email, shared information on social media, filled out the online survey. Thank you. The citizen input really created the basis of the plan, and hope that you feel that it is reflective of your thoughts. To the steering committee, and if any of the steering committee members are present tonight, I think some of you, if you would please stand. They're incorporated in the citizen thank you as well, but they spent lots of time and hours giving input. Thank them for the diligent work throughout the process, from helping us craft the RFP and hiring the consultant, all the way to all of the input through the steering committee meetings. We thank you. Thank you also to the P&Z and the City Council and the staff work group. All of y'all's input has really indicated that you want to work toward making this plan a reality, and so we thank you for that. There's a vested interest in making this, putting this document into action. And then on a personal note, he's not here tonight, but I just wanted to say thank you to my husband. When we started this process, we were newlyweds, and so I think he really got a sense of what it means to be married to a city planner with all of the additional meetings, so I just wanted to acknowledge that. And so lastly, I'll bring up our consulting team, Friesen Nichols, Shad Como, which is our project manager, and Tiffany McLeod, which is our manager. They'll both be giving the presentation tonight. Again, the draft was under review for the public since August the 16th. We closed the public comment on September 11th. We made those final revisions. I sent those comments to you all so you could see those final grammar and punctuation changes and everything. So we thank you for your time, and I'll turn it over to Shad.
Thank you, Chastity. Good evening to the mayor and council. Again, my name is Shad Como with Friesen Nichols. I served as a project manager for this comprehensive plan process, and also have with me Tiffany McLeod, who served as the assistant project manager. I'm going to go through a brief presentation kind of the overview of the process that we went through. The tasks and deliverables for the comprehensive plan are pretty comprehensive. They cover pretty much all the aspects that you would see in a typical comprehensive plan. As Chastity mentioned, there was a lot of input throughout the entire process. There were a couple of public meetings. We had surveys that were out on the website, various stakeholder meetings, and then the steering committee. The steering committee provided the majority of the input. And we like to say that the plan doesn't define the community, but the community defines the plan. And I think that is evident in all of the input that we received throughout the process. This is just a snapshot of the community, one of the community meetings that we had at the Senior Center. Citizens came out and city leadership came out and provided input on boards. We had anonymous polling, we had focus groups as well. There were 478 responses to the online community survey, and we received a lot of great response from that. There were also stakeholder meetings. You may remember that we had a city council and planning and zoning workshop with you all, and there were some other stakeholder groups that city staff and we met with as well. We had 7 steering committee meetings throughout the process where we really rolled up our sleeves and got down and worked through a lot of issues throughout the process. So with all of the information that we gathered throughout the process, all of that information we just, if you will, put into a big bucket. And what happened is that there were some common themes that bubbled to the top. And so you'll notice there in the bowl are the themes, and then following those are the guiding principles related to each one of those themes. And that pretty much serves as the foundation, or served as a foundation for the plan and its recommendations. So I'm going to go through, just highlight some of the chapters in the report. Chapter 1 looks at your existing conditions, a summary of demographics, and there's also detailed demographics in the appendix. And it ends with the guiding principles that sets the foundation for the rest of the plan. Just a snapshot of the existing land use. Chapter 2, this is what some consider probably one of the most important parts of a comprehensive plan, is your future land use. It identifies those lands and how they should be used in the future. And there's also a highlight on opportunity areas. One of the things that we did differently in this plan is to identify some opportunity areas, understanding that Duncanville is landlocked and that you have developed over time, but now it's time to kind of look at how you redevelop. And so those opportunities address, those various opportunities address those issues. Chapter 3 was more so of a downtown assessment and some strategies and guidelines as you move into phase 2. You all had a downtown plan that was created, and some things were implemented from that plan. And so this chapter just kind of highlights and gives you guidelines as you move into phase 2 of that plan. Chapter 4 was more so of your community branding and identity. It looked at housing and neighborhoods, had an assessment for that. Your community design, your gateways and image zones, and a lot of recommendations related to your quality of life. This snapshot shows your neighborhood unit assessment and the gateway and image zones throughout the city. Chapter 5, transportation, looking at your existing thoroughfare plan, and we made recommendations for some roadway improvements. We didn't make specific recommendations such as you need to decrease lanes. What we did is we highlighted which roadways needed improvement and gave you a menu option of roadway treatments that can be chosen, or whichever were appropriate for those particular roadways. And so in the future, when you go to make those improvements, you would need to do a more detailed assessment on what's appropriate and how that responds to the existing conditions in the market at that time. And finally, Chapter 6, throughout the plan, you can see the highlights and the recommendations from each chapter. And how Chapter 6 just brings all of that information together. It shows you the recommendations and how they tie in the various guiding principles and the themes, the responsible parties who would lead those recommendation efforts, and some magnitude of costs as well. So a snapshot of that, what that implementation matrix looks like. And then the appendix, as mentioned, we had a lot of public input, and so all of that information is summarized there. And then our opportunity area pool sheets, which will essentially serve as and help staff as a developer comes to the city and they want to, they're interested in a particular area. You could pull these opportunity areas and see the various recommendations and the strategies for that area, just to show that developer what the vision of the comprehensive plan is intended. So tonight for your consideration is for consideration to adopt the comprehensive plan, its vision for the community and the plan recommendations. We've had some comments that were submitted from city staff, P&Z, the committee, some council members, and so all of those are kind of summarized here. All of the comments have been addressed at this time, and the steering committee and the Planning and Zoning Committee also unanimously approved for adoption. So tonight, that'll be what you all are considering, and then at the end, we'll bundle everything up, produce the hard copies, as well as electronic files. Everything will be turned over to you for final production and deliverables. So at this time, I'll take any questions or comments.
Councilwoman Jameson.
Yes, on page 2 of the revisions, you have opportunity area number 6, I-20 and East Camp Wisdom Road. Number 2, reflect restaurants, et cetera, on the west side of Oriole.
Yes, for the rendering.
Mm-hmm. So is that, you're talking about on the north or the south side of I-20 on Oriole?
The south side. And it's existing there already, correct? And so it was just to reflect those within the rendering.
Yeah, and then on page 1, you had Chapter 1 added a statement about how COG mobility plan ties to the comprehensive plan. Number 7.
Yes, ma'am.
And what was that statement that you added?
Okay, on page 27, the comment was really to elaborate or expand on the COGS mobility plan, which is Mobility 2040, and how that ties to the comp plan.
I'm sorry,
really,
the plan between?
Mobility 2040, which
Okay.
is the COG mobility plan. So page 27, we dedicated a section to just summarize what the Mobility 2040 plan is from COG, and really how the VeloWeb tie to the comprehensive plan recommendations, and that was really for connectivity, pedestrian connections. So that's how we addressed that comment on page 27.
Okay, and then number 22, chapter 4, reference added of anticipated start date of I-20 and Highway 67 improvements.
Yes. We received start dates from staff, and I can pull that. Could you repeat that, the comment number?
It was number 22, Chapter 4, reference added of anticipated start date of I-20 and Highway 67 improvements.
Okay. On page 131, as we have the future capital improvements plan start date for I-20, and that's anticipated fall, winter of 2019. And for US 67, anticipated start date fall 2017.
So you just wrote in that the anticipated start date was fall, winter
Correct.
of 2019?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, 67 has begun.
That's my question.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Okay, go ahead.
Page 112 on your graph, your chart, you have the Harvey Ball examples. How are those weighted?
How are they rated?
How were they weighted?
Weighted, there's an example, or there's an example at the bottom of the page where you have the full circle colored is
Yes,
best.
I see those, but in order to get a Harvey Ball, to rate one of those, you take certain things into consideration, you weigh it, and then you come up with one of these. So I want to know how it was weighted.
Well,
So,
it was rated, if you look at the top of the chart, those various units, that's how it was
yes,
rated.
weighted, so 10%, 20%?
I'm
you
not
know.
sure. That was our sub-consultant, Catalyst Commercial, that did the analysis, the detail analysis. So I can't address that question, how it was weighted.
Yeah, I've got some issues with the weighting of it by looking at the numbers. And I'd just like to know, I'd just like to know how it was done.
We can provide that.
I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? This is a public hearing, so we invite the public to enter into the discussion. If you've got comments or you're speaking in favor or against the comprehensive plan, we would certainly invite you up to do that. The final edition of this with the typos and the corrections that were asked to be made have now been made, and the document is online. Once it's approved, then the final publications will be done, and the copies will be available. Please give your name and address.
Hello, Gail Sliger, 1405 South Main, Duncanville. I would like to remind the public and the council that this is in fact a living document. When we chose to start this plan and interviewed consultants, we said, please do not give us a document that you sit on the shelf and do not look at. This is not a plan that will be implemented today or tomorrow. We will begin that process. And the facts are, if we don't have a roadmap, we can't get to the destination desired. And so this is simply a roadmap. We may change destinations and take a side trip, but this will not be completed in the next year or 2 or 3. This is a long-range plan to give us a goal where our city has a destination, and that is why we call it Destination Duncanville. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Sheldon Silk, 14 Polo Court. I'd like to just echo what Ms. Slagle said. As a member of the steering committee, having participated in the process for the past year, I feel very good and very positive about the outcome. I think this was an expensive undertaking, but a very worthwhile one. I think, though, that the real work lies ahead. There are, in the implementation section of the plan, I believe some 40-plus potential opportunities. I mean, that's the good news. We've got a large laundry list of opportunities to enhance the quality of our community, to become a very attractive destination, if you will. But it's also going to, I think, challenge the current council and councils to come. You're hearing all the issues tonight about the struggle regarding how are we going to minimize the ongoing expense of our streets and roads. Well, how are we going to juggle all these balls at the same time? You know, we want to attract businesses. We want to give our citizens tax relief. I think everybody up here, even though the vote's 5-2 on several issues tonight, I think all 7 of you represent a consensus on the issue that you want to promote taxpayer relief by attracting business industry and increasing sales tax, having viable businesses that are interested in establishing their commerce here in Duncanville, and that we would thrive subsequently. But in order to do all that, I think this council and future ones, have to work very smart in balancing many of these different opportunities and prioritizing them. And they're also going to be expensive. And I think that, appreciate the fact that you're all volunteering your time and effort, and I know just the time and effort all of us that were on the steering committee spent was a lot. It was worthwhile and it was very beneficial, and we liked the outcome. But I hope that there's some mechanism that you set up, because I don't think all of you can sit down and tackle all those opportunities, prioritize them, figure out where the funding is going to come from, and all the associated challenges. So nevertheless, and it's going to be costly. So this whole process of moving forward, to me, is the real work that lies ahead of us to make this whole effort of putting the plan together really become viable and effective, and create the benefits that we all hope will come from them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Wesley Jameson, 1214 Lady Lane. I attended the community meeting, one of the community meetings, and was very impressed with the level of professionalism that this was approached with. I think the common theme of what I want to say, though, here is we have a lot of very talented people in Duncanville. We have a lot of very talented people on the steering committees, people who volunteer their times, selfless people who dedicate a lot of what they do to improving their living conditions and the quality of life of others. I have one question for the city manager. How much did this cost?
I don't remember the exact number. I think it was, Chastity, what was the cost on that?
There was a $250,000 budget in the innovation fund, but the contract actually only came to $231,000.
$231,000 for that plan.
Okay. So $231,000. Then I also hear, of course, it's a living, breathing plan. So does that mean that there's going to be continuing cost to operationalize this plan? As Mr. Silk said, it's an expensive plan. There's a lot of great ideas. If we all had unlimited funds, we'd do a whole lot of stuff with a lot of different things. But it is expensive, and prioritizing those things that get addressed initially as well as followed through on is going to take some time and effort and continuing time of the people who have volunteered their time to do this. So is there an ongoing cost to helping facilitate this comprehensive plan with the consultants that we currently have?
To answer that question, not at this time. We did propose in the budget for the coming year a consultant to help us with redrafting the ordinances, because one of the recommendations from the plan is to redraft a lot of our development ordinances. That is a huge undertaking to do, and so we'll look for some help with that with staff. Otherwise, if we were to do it entirely in-house, it could probably take a couple of years to do. And I think it's important that we get our development ordinances in place to match the goals of the comprehensive plan. Otherwise, as far as any other costs, a lot of the recommendations that are in there are not costs. They're basically developing policies, implementing programs. Those would be staff functions. There's some other things in there that are related to some of the other committees, the EDC, the Neighborhood Vitality Commission, and so forth. Most cities on a comprehensive plan will review their comprehensive plan every few years and look at where they're at on it. Anticipate that those will probably be done in-house with our staff.
So the answer to the question then would be minimal additional cost, but there is some in the budget for that, should we need that? Okay. You know, I think that as a common theme for tonight's meeting overall,
I'm sorry, let me make one other caveat to that. As Mr. Selk mentioned, a number of the things that are in there also do take money. Yeah. So some of the things as far as like developing landscaping, redoing streetscapes, things like that, those do take funding, and those will be council decisions at some point as to how to fund those, whether it's through bonds or whether it's through revenues or whatever that case may be. Those are in there as well. So there are things like that that are going to cost money, and those will be prioritized by this council and by future councils. And as mentioned before, it's a long-range plan. It's not, although the recommendations in there and they're broken out by cost, they're broken out by time frame. Some of them are relatively immediate. Some of them are going to take 10 years or more probably to accomplish.
Well, I know we heard very similar rhetoric a few years back when the Main Street Vision was being operationalized, and that plan, I think that was another $300,000 consulting fee with, what was his name, Popovich, and how is that going to interface with this plan? And we spend a lot of money to come up with ideas, and as I think Ms. Schleiger said, a lot of which sit on the shelf. And if that's where the Main Street plan is, then why don't we dust it off, or why didn't we utilize it as part of this and maybe reduce the cost on the consulting of this one? Just the thing, rhetorical questions to think about as we try to approach the best way to spend taxpayer money. And I know we have a lot of talented city staff. I know we have a lot of talented people within the city of Duncanville, that if we tap some of that resource, perhaps we can save a few pennies. And we all are in a mode to save taxpayer money. We should be, from the employee salaries to the top-heavy administrative costs to any number of different places that could be cost-saving measures. So perhaps it's too late for this budget, but as we, I guess, have learned, we should start the new budget tomorrow then. Thank you.
I want to comment on that. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Gregory Zilka, 1319 Green Tree. I appreciate your efforts with this plan. I do appreciate Chastity Allen's hard work that she put forward into this plan. I think this plan is a great foundation for the city going forward. I don't see this plan as for us actively. It's going to be for our kids and where our kids will be in 20 years with our city that stay here and hopefully stay here after they graduate the schools. So I really hope that this plan is passed. I think it provides opportunities to pull together a lot of resources from the different various departments and the city council and various business districts around here, where they want their areas to be in the future. And I know there's a lot of areas in town that could use a lift up. And this plan, I think, will help address those areas, which will help our whole economic base. So I really foresee this as a great opportunity. So I do encourage you to pass this. And we have to compete with our neighboring cities. And we also have to partner with our neighboring cities. And I hope this plan helps tie those two together so that our city becomes stronger down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the comments I wanted to make about the Main Street plan, it has not been put on the shelf. It doesn't need to be dusted off. It's an integral part of this plan. We realize that the Main Street plan is now several years old. It needed some revisions. It needed, we were going to have to make some zoning changes. We're going to have to, the plan recommended some expansions of the area to better accommodate what we want to do on Main Street. So we kind of put the skids on it until we could incorporate it into the new master plan. So it's part of it. Main Street plan covers and has been planned from I-20 down to Wheatland Road. And that is still very viable in one of the areas that we're going to concentrate on, as well as several other of the arteries that we have here in the city.
Barry Gordon, 1751 Crescent Lane, Mayor and Council. I want to take a moment to educate both the council and all the citizenry that are here tonight to understand the process that we went through as part of the steering committee. It was not a rubber stamp. There were several evenings where we got together with the 7 meetings that we had with the consultants, that they were challenged by us on the steering committee. And in that challenge, it was well understood that just because they put something out as a consultant does not mean we accepted it. There are challenges that we gave them that said, why does it apply to us? What are you bringing to us as consultants that you have brought in a template form to other cities? What are you doing differently for Duncanville that you have not done, or that you have not done for any other city? What are you doing that is unique for Duncanville? So we gave them that challenge, and they stepped up. It took them a little while to respond, I'll be honest with you. You know, I'm not sure that they were necessarily accustomed to being challenged by a steering committee. But when we did challenge them, in the next meeting or the meeting after that, they responded. They responded well. They gave us good information. From a personal perspective, I was educated to an extreme degree. There's a whole list of new acronyms I have in my vocabulary now that I never had before. And so in that regard, I'm extremely educated in terms of what's going on. Having been involved in master plans in the marketplace, the master plans that I've been associated with have been somewhere in the 7 to 10 year time frame. This one is a 15 to 20 year time frame, and I think it's important for council and the citizenry to understand that, because nothing in here is going to happen fast. And it is a living document. Why is it a living document? It has to be a living document. If it's going to encompass 2 decades or a decade and a half in order to incorporate some of the recommendations that they've made, we cannot incorporate all of them. That has to be a given. It's just too voluminous. So what has to happen is staff and council over time, as Mr. Hugman has said, there's going to have to be some prioritization. At one particular point in my career, when I had to look at what was coming on in terms of capital expenditures, I had over 200 projects on my desk that people wanted to do. You can't do 200 projects. What we had to do is we sat down, we picked 5. What are the most feasible? What are those that are going to be done in the quickest amount of time, and what's going to give us the greatest return on investment? And those 5 are what got done. Those other 155, whatever we had sitting on the table, we told the initiators of those, you're going to have to wait. You're going to have to wait, because we have to prioritize. We like your wishes, we like your dreams, but all those can't come to fruition. And it's going to be the same thing with this master plan. I implore the council and in the staff to sit down at some point in time and pick 5 and say, what can we do? What can we actually get on with? What can happen, and what's the time frame for those? Personally, I'm in sticker shock over some of them. I'm on the Economic Development Corporation Board, and looking through a lot of those recommendations that the consultants have put on, EDC pops up many times. And I looked at that and I went, uh-oh. That burden of responsibility is going to fall to the EDC, and it's going to fall on Ms. James' shoulders. And that's not going to be an easy task as well. So the intent of the comprehensive plan, I think, is wonderful. It's something that the city needs. Just becoming involved in the municipality itself for a very short time myself, I'm beginning to see that it is a necessary document. I'm glad that it was done. The concern is when. And one thing we cannot do as a city is look at this and say, we got to do it today, because the budget is going to be something very strong to consider. Economic development is at the foremost in my mind and that of Jessica James as well. We look at things every month. What can we do to enhance the economic development of this city? It's a tough nut to crack, folks. It is a very tough nut to crack. Councilman LeBlanc has a very valid point when he discusses, he had us look at what about the vacant buildings in the city. It came up, I believe, last time, and we discussed this at our last meeting. That's a thorn. We understand that, Councilman. And it's not an easy one, because we've explained we have landlords that own these buildings that are not residents and don't take a lot of care in what they do. But pressing that and putting that and melding it into the comprehensive plan as a living, breathing document that is, number one, is it feasible? And the answer to that is yes. Is it economically feasible? The answer to that is yes. Is it economically feasible in the next 3 to 5 years? Maybe. But that's going to be, as Greg said and others, and Mr. Jameson said, this council and others in the future are going to have to use this plan and not let it sit, because return on investment of that $231,000 has to be realized. The citizenry expects an ROI on that $231,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Christina Lu. I live at 434 Blue Ridge. Whatever project you guys...
Would you please give your name and address for the record?
434 Blue Ridge Drive, Duncanville. I know the city has a lot of deficit since the previous manager, but it's how you apply all the taxpayers' money, because we show the loyalty to the government, and they need to have the mentality, provide the service, and follow the Confucius philosophy, sincere intention, okay? Righteous mind, behave oneself, then we have the family intact, everybody happy to be the resident in Duncanville, because even Richardson, they can provide the service for the city. So if everybody's mindset is sincere intention, providing service, what counts is we live on this earth, paying the rent for living in the earth. Instead of we try to get a lot more, and instead of giving out, that's a whole big difference, how to make Duncanville morally beautiful. Then even limited amount of money is sufficient to make a huge project work. That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? This is a public hearing now. If we have no one else, the chair will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Will you please vote? You still got one out? Okay, thank you. Okay, Chair will entertain a motion regarding item number G. No motion? Okay.
I'll move that we adopt the master plan as presented, the comprehensive master plan.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, will you please vote? Thank you very much. Thank all of you, committee. You really worked very hard on this. Item number H is to take any necessary action as a result of the executive session. There were two items discussed in the executive session tonight. Of course, we couldn't vote on them if there were motions to come out of that. So the first item that was discussed was regarding attendance at executive sessions of boards and commissions by members of the city council. And we did have discussion on this. Is there a motion to come out of that?
Mayor, I have a motion. I'd like to speak to my motion after I make the motion. I move to direct the Duncanville Economic Development Corporation to review their bylaws in regards to allowing non-essential persons in their executive sessions.
Second.
There's a motion in a second, and you wanted to discuss this, Minister.
Yes, sir. As we heard from the attorney this evening, the governing body, which is the 4B board, the Economic Development Corporation, decides who's essential to be in the meeting. In other words, if they need an attorney's advice or an appraiser's advice or the city manager's, it has relevant information. So they decide the essential person. About 3 years ago, the city council initiated liaisons to be on on boards. And this is my perception, is that these liaisons come into boards and committees, and the board members, the committee members, or the commissioners see them with the color of authority representing the whole council. And that is an unbalanced, in my view, an unbalanced view, because the council is 7 people, not 2, not 1, not 3. So you have an unbalance there being present as far as influence. So the influence could be issues that they bring up or comments that they have, or the influence can actually be not saying anything at all. So they will say, oh, well, there wasn't an issue, so the council must be on board with this. So actual saying things, discussion, or not saying anything at all. Well, currently, we have secretaries in the meetings that take notes. And so if any one of the council members want to review the notes, we can review it, and we can be kept up on what's going on. So, so there's a transparency there for the council member. So District 3 shouldn't have any more influence on matters coming before the Parks Board than District 2. So if I say my opinion and District 2 reads the minutes, he can come back and say, well, wait a minute, that's your opinion. That's not the full council's opinion. That's certainly not my opinion. So that kind of keeps it in check, having the minutes. But when you go into an executive session, those minutes are kept private. In fact, the members in the executive session aren't even allowed to discuss outside what was discussed. So if I go into an executive session and as a council person, and I'm part of the conversation, or if I'm not part of the conversation, I cannot go tell my fellow council members what was discussed. That's against the law, whether I want to or not. And if I want to hear what's going on in an executive session, or what, if I want, as a council member, if I want to know what went on in an executive council session, I cannot, of a governing board, say the P&Z board or the 4B board, I can't, because I'm not part of that governing body. So you have council members who are in that executive session that are getting not more information, but also exerting influence. So that is the reason why I'm suggesting that this go back to the Duncanville Economic Development Corporation for them to review it.
Councilwoman Jameson.
The economic development bylaws have been there since the beginning of time. Since the beginning of that board when it was established. And it was established by the state legislature. There wasn't an issue. We've changed them somewhat over the years. We've upgraded them. So what happened was about 3 years ago when we all of a sudden had liaisons for different boards. I did not volunteer to be a liaison. We'd never had them before. I didn't do it the first year. I didn't do it the second year. And I decided the third year, you know, maybe it looked like I wasn't participating. So I volunteered to be a liaison for the 4B, the TIF, and the animal board, animal
shelter.
Yeah, animal shelter. And so council member LeBlanc and I showed up for the meeting, the first meeting, and we sat there and listened. The only thing I said, I was asked, do you want to go by council member or do you want to go by Johnette? I said, Johnette's fine with me. You know, I just was sitting there listening. I was going to be the liaison. And let's see, the way the bylaws read now is Section 4 of the Article 3, Section 4. I'm sorry, Article 4, Section 4, says, participation in board meetings, the city manager, city manager, secretary, mayor, and council members shall have the right to take part in any discussion of the board or committees thereof, including attendance of executive sessions, but shall not have the power to vote in any meetings attended. Well, we were asked to leave by the economic development director. And I knew this wasn't correct. And I said, well, we're not supposed to leave. Yes. And was told that Dennis Schwartz, who was the previous liaison, was on the board, that they told him to leave and he didn't have a problem. He left. I said, I don't care. I'm not Dennis Schwartz. That's not what the law says. That's not what the bylaws. So anyway, we come back. I talked to the city manager. He doesn't know, and the attorney said he'd look at it. I found the bylaws, looked it up, and it was like, oh, okay, and they apologized. And then the next thing we get is an attorney's opinion, and it said basically, okay, well, you can't go into executive sessions on other committees. Okay. They don't have bylaws. And then I guess that wasn't exactly what whomever, and I don't know who it is, wanted it to say, so we came back with a correction. And it said that the state law says that the governing board could vote on who could attend their executive sessions. Okay, well, first of all, the council is elected by the citizens. The Economic Development Board is appointed by the council. And everything they have comes before us. So I can't imagine why it wouldn't be okay to sit in an executive session. And saying that two people from the council might be there and they didn't find out something at the same time that the rest of them did, we do have our own operating rules for the council that says that we find out all information at the same time. However, you go to the Rotary, you go to Chamber, you go to Lions Club, you're just out in the community. You find out stuff all the time that the rest of the board does not know. Sometimes we tell each other, sometimes it's the next meeting and it comes up, but there's all sorts of information, number one. Number two, any council member besides the liaisons can attend the meeting. And so let me just also preface this and say, I talked to an attorney in another town who had, I asked him about council members going to executive sessions of the economic development. Said they'd already answered that, and that your bylaws say it. The council voted on it. The 4B set them up. The council voted on it. That was the governing board, and it was fine. I can't imagine why it wouldn't be. And then I said, what about the state law? And I called the Attorney General's office. They will not give a written opinion unless you are like higher up elected official, like a state legislature or the Dallas County judge or anyway, I did get someone to tell me they would get an opinion for me on it. But what they said to me on the phone was that law was not to keep council members out of executive sessions on a committee. It was set up so that they would know that if they had an expert person with an opinion, say like on oil and gas, that they could invite them into the meeting to speak. It wasn't to keep council members out. And it was really odd to me that all of a sudden, I don't understand this. In the past, any council member, we didn't have liaisons, any council member could go into an executive session. It never was an issue, never was a problem. Now all of a sudden, and you've already heard the opinion of one. And, you know, I can say this, that I know that the council member Thomas had an issue with a committee before that came up. She spoke in a committee meeting, and you know they didn't have a time set aside for someone to speak, and anyway it became a big brouhaha. I hadn't intended to speak anyway. I was going to listen because I was curious as to the thought process of the people on the board and what their you know how they came about it. If I had something to say, I can say it in my own meeting, even though it said I could say it. I'm just more curious as to what is coming before them and what their opinion is, what their thought process is. And you know, I'm open-minded enough that I may think I know what I'm talking about, but if I hear somebody else who has a better idea or more information, they can change my mind. So I don't understand now. All the brouhaha. Any council person, and most of the meetings they have on there that there may be a quorum of council people, so it covers it if they do show up. And I can tell you there is no stampede to go to economic development meetings or P&Z or any of the other committees that they have. The mayor's a liaison on the Keep Duncanville Beautiful board. I think I went to one or two of those years ago. There's all these meetings are, you know, you have to be dedicated to go to them, and they're tedious. And if you want to go, fine. If you don't, don't. As far as the council goes, so I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand. As far as feeling pressure, they should feel pressure anytime because we vote on everything that they vote on. It comes before us at the end. What you don't hear is how they got to that point, what the process, their thought process was. What maybe someone said on the committee that you weren't privy to hear. And maybe they had a good idea and it was kind of lost. So this is difficult for me to, I don't know what's going on. I wonder, what is it that you're doing that you don't want us to hear? And as far as one person hearing more than somebody else, anybody on this committee, anybody that's on this board can go to the meeting. Anybody. That's what the bylaws say. So nobody's stopping them. If they felt like they were missing some information, they could go. It doesn't make sense.
Is there any further discussion? There is a motion on the floor to direct the Economic Development Board to consider a change in their bylaws. And what's happened in the past and what the bylaws say can be changed by the Economic Development Board. And if they feel a level of discomfort from having council people at their meeting, or especially in an executive meeting where they sometimes want to discuss issues in private, and there could be some influence by just the council person being there, to the point that they might not want to openly discuss the issue as much as they would be if they were not there. The council appoints that board. So when I was on the P&Z board, I did feel pressure from a couple of the council people who I felt were looking very closely at what I said and what I did. And maybe that kept me from expressing all of the views that I had. I don't know. So I for one, am in favor of 4B board looking at this issue, and this time they can determine whether they want to change their bylaws or whether they want to leave them like they are. So that's all this motion does, is request them to take a look at it, and if they see fit and want to change it, they have the ability to change it. Any further discussion?
Mayor, so all we're asking them to do is look at their bylaws.
Yes, that's what the motion was, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah, to review. Seeing no further lights, the motion on the floor is as stated for the council to request the Economic Development Board to take a look at their bylaws concerning this council members' attendance in executive sessions. So at this time, will you please vote?
Wait a minute, you said one specific part. I thought it was to review the bylaws. Now you're saying to review whether council should be in executive.
Their bylaws concerning this particular item.
Isn't that one item, it's the whole bylaw.
No, the motion is in regards to allowing non-essential persons in their executive sessions.
Okay, will you please vote? Okay, thank you very much. There was a second item on the agenda in the executive committee that it was regarding Senate Bill 1004, enacted at the regular 85th legislative session, and it would pertain to they don't call them cell towers. What are they? They're modulars, small cell modes in the parkway. The state legislature set a fee that would really restrict cities from charging what they normally charge, and they could attach them to telephone poles or power poles or anything else that we have. We just tonight adopted that fee schedule that the state legislature said we had to go by, and I think it's, what, $250? And there was some negotiation of fees prior to the state legislature taking that power away from the city of up to $1,500. Is that correct, City Attorney?
$1,000 for poles.
$1,000 per poles. So it will be a significant loss to the city of Duncanville if we have to abide by what the state legislature passed on this Senate Bill 1004. This was led by the cell phone people in the enactment of this. Now, there has been a suit filed challenging the legislature and their power to regulate what the cities were doing. Is that correct? Is that a correct statement? And so we've been asked to join that suit. The cost to the city of Duncanville, it's based on population. There are a lot of cities involved in it. It's $5,700. Is that right? Okay, $5,700 for us to join the suit. Now, we said at the time, no, we don't want to do it. But since then, there has been, the lawyers have gotten together and filed the suit. And it may be, city attorney explained that, it may be that we would not be able to recover fees if they won the case.
Correct. The concern is that if we're not part of the lawsuit, depending on the outcome of the lawsuit, it may affect the city's ability to recover or to collect additional amounts as we would otherwise, and if we were not limited by state law, as the prevailing parties may have the ability to do, again, depending on the outcome of the lawsuit.
Okay.
Mayor, I move that we join the lawsuit.
And Mayor, if I may,
yes.
If I may just modify the motion, because there is some specific language that has been requested to be included in the event that it is approved.
If we wanted to do that, what is that language?
So the motion would be to approve the joinder of the city of Duncanville with the city of McAllen and other Texas municipalities, to contest the legal applicability and validity of Senate Bill 1004 passed by the 85th legislature, and to authorize payment of lawsuit joinder sum of approximately $5,700, approve the hiring of Bickerstaff, Heath, Delgado, and Acosta LLP for such joinder fee, and to authorize the city attorney and city manager to execute an engagement letter and authorize the same to take appropriate and authorized action expressed and implied to further the city of Duncanville interest therein.
Is that the motion you wanted to make?
Yes, exactly, word for word.
Second.
There's a motion and second. Discussion? Seeing none, will you please vote? Okay, thank you very much. The final item tonight will be item number 6A, and that's a fire department quarterly report. Did all the fire department leave?
I think he was asleep.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, Mr. Hugman, Ms. Downs, and Ms. Allen. I'm here, Greg Chase, Assistant Fire Chief. I'm going to give you the quarterly report from the fire department. And I need a helper. All right, first off, we need to update our very first item. We now have one vacant position. We hired a young man the other day. His starting date will be October the 2nd, so we're one away from being full for the first time in quite some time. We're giving a civil service exam on Saturday, October the 7th. If you know of anybody that's interested, please tell them to come apply with us. Even though we're almost full, we do have 4 that are in paramedic school up at downtown campus at El Centro. They're scheduled to graduate in January of 18. They're about to start another paramedic school at the El Centro has decided to do some satellite campuses, and they're going to have a paramedic class at DeSoto Fire Training Center, which is excellent for our guys. we will have 4 going to that class as well. So even though we're closing in on being full, we're fixing to be 8 down with them in paramedic school, but by next, hopefully late spring, early summer, we're gonna be rocking along real good on our staffing for the first time in quite a while. Our annual awards banquet was held August the 26th. Our firefighter of the year was given to firefighter paramedic Sean Brown, and our paramedic of the year was given to Brent Neighbors. Brent is a Duncanville High School graduate on top of that, so we're very proud of them. Our fire officer of the year is Captain David Leith. Captain Leith was also one of the guys that was deployed to South Texas for the Hurricane Harvey relief. David has 35 years on the fire department come October the 1st. And just one thing I noticed about this slide when I was looking at them, Captain Leith, Chief Rhodey, and in the background Mike Ryan, that's 91 years of service to the Duncanville Fire Department. So we're very pleased to have them on board. The Physical Fitness Award was given to Captain Adam Langan. He was very instrumental in getting the Assistant Firefighter Grant that the council approved last year. We've gotten a lot of workout equipment, and it has been a huge morale booster to the firefighters to have them work out with very good equipment. As a matter of fact, today we had a working house fire, had a fill-in engine came by from a different city. They were at our station, and they were just gushing about our equipment that we had that they don't have. So they're bragging about stuff we have instead of the other way around. It was a physical fitness award, and he leads his shift and some of the other crews in their fitness activities. That would be him on the right in the picture for the physical fitness stuff. Reed Sherman was named our MVP award winner. Reed does just about everything you could imagine. He's part of the hiring process, interview board, background checks, EMS committee, you name it, he does it, and we're very proud to have Reed. Community Service Award went to Pam McAllister, our fire inspector, and our final award went to Battalion Chief Rob Hancock. That was Tim Rife Award. Just to let you know, Tim Rife was a captain with the fire department. He put in 18 years and 4 months of service. He retired on medical disability on June the 15th of 2012 due to being diagnosed with colorectal cancer due to firefighting. He passed away on April the 20th, 2014 at the age of 48. He left behind his wife Renee and his kids Travis, Josh, and Ashley. And any chance we get to keep his memory alive, we do it. And this is basically the highest honor you can get from our fire department. Fire department also participated in the July 4th parade. We had our battalion chief, our medic, and our engine. We did have an EMS cart cruising around inside the fence at the fireworks that did take care of a few bumps and bruises. Our brush truck was on standby. They actually had a fire right there at the launch site that they quickly handled. And our fire prevention staff was also in the park, and we did have, were taking part in the EOC operations inside City Hall. We did receive a new ambulance back in August. It was placed in service. It's a very nice piece of equipment. We appreciate y'all approving that. It does have some newer updated things that we enjoy very much as far as the suspension goes. You don't get bounced around like you're in the back of a pickup truck anymore, like some of the older ones. And there's some other attributes that are came with it that are working out very well. Speaking of the grants, normally we have been applying for these FEMA grants. It's a 10% match, so basically we're getting 90% discount on a lot of this equipment. We got the workout equipment last year. This year we received, or 2016 grant, we received what they call a Lucas device. That's an automatic battery operated device that does CPR. When you plug it in, it'll start doing chest compressions at a very efficient rate. We received these like August the I'm gonna say 10th, 15th. On August the 23rd, we actually, for the first time, used it, and the person we used it on was in, obviously, full cardiac arrest and walked out of the hospital alive. So within a week, these came in very handy. We got 4 of them. They're about 20 grand a piece. The Life Pack 15s are the state-of-the-art Life Packs. They are around $37,000 a piece. So we had 2 battalion chiefs that were accepted to the National Fire Academy. That's basically the pinnacle of fire service education, and we're very pleased to announce that they were accepted. They'll be attending next February in Emmitsburg, Maryland. Our fire prevention department kicked off their fire safety calendar program, where they sell calendars to help, or they have the kids at the 3rd and 4th grade students in Duncanville schools within the city of Duncanville. They draw the calendars. Then the fire prevention office, excuse me, and the Firefighters Association sell the calendars, and that helps sponsor kids to go to the Parkland Burn Camp down in Meridian, which is outside of Waco. They go to Camp Ifonka Chi. I practiced that word all day, and I was going to say it. American Legion Post was spearheaded by Michael Stewart. They donated $2,150 to the program. We went over there and accepted that award a couple of weeks ago, and they're going to be able to sponsor 4 kids to go down there. And what that allows to do is these kids with burn injuries, they are able to go and have some recreation time, good time, camp type atmosphere with other burn victims, to where they can freely play without having any issues. We did start our smoke detector installation program. They started in District 1 last weekend. They made contact with 73 houses. They put 56 smoke detectors in 32 different houses. There's Fire Marshal Truesdale, Pam McAllister, the State Fire Marshal, and the State Insurance Council member in the picture. District 5 will be September the 30th, District 2 on October the 21st, and District 3 is the 28th of October, and District 4 is November the 4th. So if you know anybody that needs a smoke detector, please tell them to contact the fire department. But also, if anybody's listening, do not call 911 for this, okay? We've had, and I'm being serious, we've had several calls to our dispatch requesting an engine crew to come put these in. So if you know of anybody, call the non-emergency line, please. The other thing we've done in the past few weeks is we did send an engine crew to help with the Hurricane Harvey recovery. Well, actually, it was during the rescue mode of it. We had 1 engine crew. That's our engine crew on the left, with David Leith, Stephen Hatley, Dan Kendall, and Ken Carmona. These disasters take an enormous amount of effort to make sure everything goes smoothly, and the way this operation ended up, the guys on the right is a strike team out of Wichita Falls. Our crew met up with Wichita Falls on the side of I-45 at a convenience store, met up. They were headed to Conroe to backfill the stations there while they ran calls. And the way things change in these disasters, it happens minute by minute and hour by hour. They were held up, said, no, don't come down there. They ended up having to spend the night in a hotel in Corsicana, which all the evacuees had taken up the good hotels. These guys, they got like 3 rooms for $40 or something. So, but my hat's off to Corsicana Fire Department, made a couple of phone calls. They came out, picked them up. We were able to store our equipment behind a secure fenced area at their service center. They came and picked them up the next morning to take them back to the equipment. They then headed toward Montgomery County, which is what the slide says, down to Conroe. They got down there, they were diverted. Actually, they made it into Houston, then they were diverted over to Humboldt, Atascocita area, right on the shores of Lake Houston, where we initially thought they were doing backfill, but they ended up doing water rescues for 2 days in a row. I'm not sure if they even went to bed, but when they did, they were sleeping in the high school cafeteria on the floor. But at least they were dry. Once they were there for 2 days, they ended up in Bridge City. which is right on the coast, and this is some of the pictures from Bridge City. The one on the top left, you can see the flood still in the background with all the debris on the road. One in the top middle is Dan Kendall. He's a paramedic. Wichita Falls didn't have any paramedics with them. We did. They kind of flip-flopped around where they could make emergency calls, medical calls. I think what this was is they were actually coming out of a driveway back to the apparatus. The driver stayed with the apparatus, and that's why the picture was caught. But they are carrying all of their equipment and wading through the water to get to the houses. In the other pictures, you can see some of the flood damage. And those are the two bridges going over Bridge City. That was also in their area. Tanya Hunter, our emergency management coordinator, she was assisting with the Emergency Operations Center in Dallas. She was actually the emergency manager, flip-flopping shifts with people. So she was in charge of that for a while, along with what they were in charge of was that mega shelter up there. There was a lot of dynamic things going on with the sheltering, where they were going to shelter them at, and when they decided to open the mega shelter, that's where she went. Very, very valuable part of our emergency management team. CERT teams, they also assisted with the service sheltering at the mega center. And Chief Hancock, Rob Hancock, he deployed out on September the 5th. He went down to Port Arthur to help out with the incident command center. He also met up, excuse me, with Chief Rodney Smith, Cedar Hill Assistant Fire Chief, who had gone down like 3 or 4 days before that, and he was actually the incident commander for Orange County. So our guys in the best Southwest cities, we played a good role in the Hurricane Harvey rescue and recovery efforts, and we're very proud of what they accomplished. We also did right before all this, we did our own EOC activation, full-scale activation that a lot of the staff members participated in. We tested out every bridge, all of the laptops, printer, telephones, networks, because communication is one of the big downfalls when one of these things occurs, and we need to make sure all of ours work. All of our calls, we had about 1,790 calls for service, fires, building. We had 14 building fires. I think there was right around a little less than $200,000 in fire loss in that quarter. Had 1,342 EMS calls for service, and they completed 253 business inspections. We thank you for your support. Do you have any questions? No questions?
Thank you very much. That was the last item on our agenda, so seeing that we've completed all agenda items, we will stand adjourned at 9:43. I want to remind the council that we're set up to take a council picture, so please hang around just for a little while.